Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone's off having a kip. It is Tuesday night. This is your transfer news, views, and clues update for the day. It's January the 23rd. I hope you're all doing wonderful things with wonderful people. If you don't mind, guys, only if you enjoy the content, then smash the like button for me on the video. It really does help the channel out. Hit the subscribe button as well on the channel if you haven't already. And even if you have, can you double check you still are? Hashtag YouTube shenanigans are afoot. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. And guys, we've got some transfer news, views, and clues that weren't out earlier, but over the course of the day, a couple of things have popped up into my zeitgeist, and I thought I would bring them to your attention. We've got three strikers that we're going to sort of merge into one video. Two of the strikers we've already spoken about ad nauseum, so we're not going to spend too much time on them, but one name has popped up today that we haven't mentioned before on this channel. And it's a bit of a strange link. It's a relatively young player that's had a relatively stuttering start to his career, but has started to kind of find form in the last 6 months, this season over in Bologna. And we're going to talk all about him. His name is Joshua Zirkzee. But before we do that, we're just going to pop over to Twitter and check out a tweet from Last Word on Spurs. Shout out to those guys who are bringing to our attention that Marca have released or announced that Santiago, Gimenez, and SERHOU Guirassy are on Tottenham Hotspur's list of possible forward targets in the upcoming summer transfer window. Guirassy has hit 19 goals in 16 games for Stuttgart this season. Meanwhile, Santiago Gimenez has 21 goals and 5 assists this season from 21 appearances for Feyenoord. So what we're going to do, guys, I've spent a long time talking about both of these players before on the channel. I'm sure you can check them out. If you type any of their names into the search bar on my channel, you'll be able to find the deeper detailed view. But just to kind of refresh your memory, SERHOU Guirassy currently plying his trade over in Stuttgart, was at Stade Rennais last season, and has sort of been a bit of a journeyman. He's 27 years old. Look, he's absolutely flying, absolutely firing on all cylinders this season, as the tweet suggested, and the data and stats back it up. 14 appearances, 17 goals, and 1 assist in the Bundesliga. Playing primarily as a striker, but obviously can play off the left wing as well. His valuation, as you can see right here, guys, is showing 40 million euros right now, but it was only 10 million euros or 14 million euros in the summer before his move, and everything seems to have worked out for him at Stuttgart. What I would say about this player, guys, as I've said before, I'm not a massive fan of the idea of Tottenham going after and signing a player who's got to 27 and hasn't really flashed up on anybody's radar that much until then. Look, he has done okay in his career. I think, when he was at Stade Rennais, I think from memory, he was getting about a goal every 3.5 games and popping up. And obviously this year, it's really everything's clicked for him. As I've said before, I feel like he is a clumsy player who this season has fallen on quite a lot of luck. If you watch the way he plays, it doesn't look by design. Some of the finishes look like they could have easily gone in a plethora of different areas of the pitch, different areas other than into the back of the net. It does look clumsy. It looks awkward. He looks awkward as a player. And look, at the end of the day, the stats are all that matters to a degree, but I don't want Tottenham to necessarily go out there and commit to 3 or 4 5-year contracts on a player just because there is short supply and high demand for number 9 talents this year, unless they are absolutely certain that this isn't just an incredibly long stretched purple patch. And with this guy, I think it is. Now, look, the upside to doing a deal with him is that even though his market valuation, according to Transfer Market, is 40 million euros, I'm pretty sure I've read somewhere that he still has a buyout clause, a release fee of about 15, 16, 17 million pounds, something like that, or euros, something like that. And so technically, in terms of a transfer fee, if you were looking to go and get someone who, at least at the moment, is in red hot form, then maybe Guirassy is the guy. But what I would say, guys, is for me, if that's true that there is that transfer fee release clause, given how many big clubs are looking for strikers and given his relatively low release clause, I'm surprised that no one's triggered it. And maybe that tells its own tale, that with him, I think he needs to do it maybe one more year at this level, scoring 25 goals in the Bundesliga, to be able to feel a little bit more confident that if you were to go and commit to a long-term contract for the guy, or a long enough contract for the guy, that you wouldn't be regretting it if he went to a higher level. And let's be honest, the Bundesliga is not quite the same level. It's not a poor league, but it's not the same level as the Premier League. I'm just not convinced by this guy, and so I'd be very disappointed, even if Tottenham saw this as value for money. I personally am not looking for him as the solution to Harry Kane. Santiago Gimenez, on the other hand, is a guy that I absolutely do love, and I've done many videos about this guy. 18 appearances in the Eredivisie this year, 4 in the Champions League, and then 1 in both of the cups, I believe, the KMVB Becker Cup and the Johan Cruyff Schal. 24 appearances, 21 goals, 5 assists. He has done it at the Champions League level too. And look, for me, he's a very, very well-rounded striker coming out of Mexico. Look, I know a lot of people I speak to often remind me and remind everyone in the chats about, there seems to be a bit of a poison chalice, if you like, or a track record of a lot of really high-profile transfers coming in the striker department, specifically coming out of Holland, with massive reputations, massive sort of price tags or expectations around their neck, and then ultimately these players not sort of finding their feet and not hitting the ground running in their next step of their career. And whilst I think that's absolutely true, there is certainly quite a long line of those sort of failed or disappointing transfers, Vincent Janssen being one of them in Tottenham's recent past. I think there's also a long list of success stories that come out of Holland as well. I don't want this narrative to be confused that there is a poison chalice or that the Holland League is one to avoid altogether. I think you have to treat each player on their merit, analyze the player, and try to figure out through deep analysis, which you would hope the Tottenham scouts are doing, whether or not these players are afforded so much more room to show what skills they have in that league than they would be in the Premier League, or whether they are doing things in that league that could be transferred, whether their skills are transferable. And for me, Santiago Gimenez has everything that I would look for in, if you're going to sort of scratch around and search for someone that you hope can come in and be the next guy for Tottenham to try to somewhat fill Harry Kane's boots. And this guy reminds me a little bit of Harry Kane. He likes to come deep and connect the play. He likes to be someone who receives the ball. He's comfortable receiving the ball back to goal and face to goal. When he turns and runs at players, he's not blessed with blistering pace. He's not slow, and he certainly doesn't have the quickest feet, much like Harry Kane, but somehow manages to utilize his body to be able to, and the strength that he has within himself to be able to kind of slalom through close challenges and come out the other side with the ball. He's very comfortable with both feet. He scores goals with his right and with his left. He's strong in the air, can head the ball. And like I say, his ability to read the game, his footballing IQ, and his vision of spatial awareness is very, very detailed for someone so young. The guy is only 22 years old. He has a long career in front of him. And I think he will be, highly sought after in the summer whenever there is the opportunity for another club to come in and bid for him. What I'm hoping for personally is that when that comes around in sort of June, I hope that some of the teams that we will be competing with for his signature are struggling with FFP, or that don't have necessarily enough money within their own wiggle room, within their own accounts, to be able to afford whatever the fee for this guy will be. And reports out of, Fabrizio Romano are saying that, it could be as low as 35, 40 million, and other people are saying it could be as high as 70 million euros. I'm not sure what the right number is, but I think he's the right player for us. And I really hope that, part of the reason why he might choose Tottenham is not only after having a phone call with Ange Postecoglou, that'll be enough to kind of put the cherry on top, but also to, out of respect for the fact that Tottenham apparently, according to reports from Romano, have been sending scouts to watch him at Feyenoord since all the way back when Tottenham were scouting Arne Slot as potentially our next manager. I think we started going there to watch him and his team play football, and whilst we were there, obviously discovered Santiago Gimenez and have been keeping a close eye on him ever since. And I would hope that kind of keen interest, that maintenance of attention from our side onto him will not have gone unnoticed by him and his camp, and that he will respect and appreciate the fact that we appreciate him as much as we do. I'd love to see him in a Tottenham shirt next season. But listen, if it doesn't work out, then Tottenham will need to have a plan B. And there's, as I said before, there's not a huge amount of talent out there in the striker market at the moment, but one player that may just be that guy is this man who plays currently for Bologna, Joshua Zirkzee. And I've got this particular report up. It's from sportswitness.co.uk, but it is referencing Tuto Mercato Web's article that talks about the interest that is blossoming in Dutch player who plays currently for Bologna, Josh Zirkzee, who starred for the Serie A side this season, scoring 8 goals and registering 4 assists from 22 games. This has seen him attract interest in Italy, including from AC Milan and abroad. And Tuto Mercato Web discussed the Italian club's plan to sign him and mentioned competition from Tottenham. It says Oliver Giroud and Luka Jovic have contracts until the end of the season, and even though they could sign extensions, the Rossoneri will look for a new striker next summer. This is where 22-year-old Zirkzee can fit in. The former Bayern Munich man is tempting Stefano Pioli's side, and his name is top of their list. His deal lasts until 2026, and Tuto Mercato Web state it includes a 40 million release clause, while the Bundesliga winners can take him back for 20 million euros. And I think that's quite an important point. When I go through my analysis of him, I want you to bake that into the consideration here. It's claimed that more than Bayern Munich, but the Premier League sides are also ready to compete with Milan for the Dutchman's signature. Tottenham are one of them, and the Dutchman is said to be on the Spurs' target list. Ange Postecoglou's side didn't sign a replacement for Harry Kane last summer, and Zirkzee could be an option they consider after this season. To calm this down a little, it must be pointed out that Zirkzee has been hyped in Italy so much in recent weeks, specifically with relation to a transfer that at times it's felt forced. So, guys, what I want to do now is sort of walk you through what I've seen, what I've looked into about Josh Zirkzee. Again, he plays for a Serie A club. I'm not a massive fan of Serie A football, so not entirely well-versed in him. But I've done my due diligence on the Y Scout and looking back, not just what he's done at Bologna, but what he was doing at Feyenoord before Bayern Munich and also at Anderlecht. And I've also gone and found a scout report about him that I wanted to bring to your attention. So let's just quickly have a little gander at Josh Zirkzee, the player. This season, 19 games in all competitions, in the Serie A, 7 goals and 2 assists with 5 yellow cards. Once again, he's got a bit of a jump up in his valuation. It was only last year he, just like SERHOU Guirassy, was worth around 13 million euros. He has chosen to play for Holland or for the Netherlands. That hasn't yet appeared for their first the men's team, although has been banging in goals quite frequently in the youth setup. As I say, he started his time off a while back, all the way back with Spartan Youth. Come through the ranks. When he left Feyenoord, he went into Bayern Munich's youth team, and then eventually got his transfer out of Bayern Munich into after a failed loan move to Parma. He then moved to Anderlecht on loan, where he played under Vincent Kompany, Burnley's new manager, Vincent Kompany. After Anderlecht, he went back to Bayern Munich and then obviously got a transfer to Bologna. Now, this scout report that I have looked at is quite interesting. I'll put the link in the chat. I'd encourage you to go and read it. This scout report was written whilst he was still at Anderlecht, and it's written by scoutedftbl.com, Scouted Football. And they go through the history of Josh Zirkzee. And like I say, this is 2 years out of date. And what I think is quite interesting, and the number one takeaway that I'll give you from what I've seen of this guy, and especially when you read this particular the scout report, presuming that everything in it is accurate and logical and makes sense. And I think you'll find that there's a player here who is certainly raw, certainly not the finished article, but that whatever his weaknesses are at one point of his game, they're being pointed out to him by a series of coaches that have looked into him and want him to do better and are trying to get the best out of him. And he has improved markedly on the things that people have said he's not good at. And the things that he is good at, he has doubled down on and become stronger at. For example, this particular article points out that his link and hold-up play is very good, always has been, and that he has got this propensity to come deep, almost towards the halfway line at times, but certainly in the midfield third or the shallow end of the final third of the pitch, and pick the ball up with his back to goal. But his natural inclination when he was at Anderlecht, and obviously before then as well, was to then release the ball left or right to players that were running through, to the point where that became almost robotic of him. And his spatial awareness was really poor, and he didn't really necessarily consider that maybe sometimes he would have enough space and ability to turn himself and make the move forward with the ball at his own feet, or progress the ball forward in the move in a different way. Under Vincent Company at Anderlecht, that particular outside of his game has improved remarkably, and now he's taken that and ran with it, so to speak, metaphorically and literally. He's far more comfortable now as a player when this particular journal was being written about him relative to how he was prior. His movement in the box is something that he's always been good at, and if you look now at him doing what he does at Bologna, it's very, very impressive. His ability to find the space, to understand the flight of the ball from corners, that sort of thing, is getting better and better for a 22-year-old. I think he's 22. And so, if you, like I said, I'd encourage you to read through this. It points out a lot of his flaws. It really does go after him and says that he's terrible in the air. He's really not very fast. His acceleration is non-existent. And as I say, that he almost sort of tunnel visioned into doing the things that he was good at, where he would just come back, receive the ball, use his strength to shoulder someone off, and then pass the ball left or right to someone running behind. That was the kind of nuts and bolts of his game. Under his tutelage at Anderlecht, he improved on those things. And then that's kind of where the story finishes looking at this report. He then goes to Bologna. And as I say, if you look at the things that this particular report says are still within his areas of weakness, you can then see at Bologna that he's been improving on those things as well. And those aspects that are still called out as weaknesses in that scout report are no longer really weaknesses to me when I see what I've seen at Bologna. His first thought when he does pick the ball up is to turn and dribble with it. And for a big guy, he's 6'4", he's a very, very stocky lad who's got a lot of weight behind him, but he's got very fast feet. He's got very, very tricky feet, likes to dribble the ball, got quite technical skills where he enjoys to be able to flick the ball around players and go after it. I think he obviously clearly has been working on his athleticism as well, because, I guess athleticism is a little bit subjective, but from what I saw looking at through the Y Scout tool, I wouldn't say he's definitely not blessed with blistering pace. You wouldn't say that his pace or his acceleration is at the top end of the standout positives of the player, but he certainly isn't as slow as that report makes out, and he certainly isn't as slow off from a sort of standstill as that report works out or suggests he is. So to me, I think the takeaway is that this player is someone that knows what he's good at and does very good things with it, but knows what he's been bad at and has been coached and tried to improve on, and is someone who can adapt and learn. And so when you look at the stats that we're about to show, I think that they are moving in the right direction, and they seem like they are he's good at the certain things. But I think if you've got a player there that's got that desire to improve, then they will improve alongside him. And I think, again, as we look now at his stats, you'll see exactly, I hope you'll see exactly what I mean. So this particular set of stats, again, this is Josh Zirkzee over in Bologna this is compared on 2,172 minutes played versus the men's Big Five league. So unlike some of the other players that we sometimes compare on this website when they're playing against the top 14 leagues, this is against the very best in strikers in European football. And I think what I want you to see, we're not going to use this particular set of statistics, but see if you can try and remember what they look like generally. And you'll see that, he's good in the defense. He's in the 70th percentile. He's good in possession. This is over the last 365 days. But take a look at things like his shooting stats. They look very bad. His goal ratios, 1 in 3 games. Again, not particularly bad, but in the grand scheme of things, but relative to the top 5 leagues, not particularly great. But I'm mentioning how he's improving every year. This is the last 365 days, which includes elements of last season. He joined Bologna at the start of last season, but only played, despite playing, I think, 15 games in total in fact, let's get that up so we can just verify. So this season he's played 19 games. Over the last 2 seasons, last season, for example, I think he played in a few games, but in terms of minutes that he actually got was very few and far between. Yeah, so he played in 19 games last season, scored 2 goals and 2 assists, but only really played 810 minutes, which is about, I don't know, 7 or 8 games worth of football, maybe 9 games worth of football in total. And so you can see by the minutes, especially at the second half of the season there, he was playing in the second half, 60th minute substitute coming on, not really getting that much attention. from Bologna. But over the summer, he's improved again. And this is, again, a demonstration of where I think we need to be paying attention to a player like this. Keep an eye on these sorts of values here over the last 365 days. And if we then focus on over the last, just this season alone, you can see that there's a marked improvement this season, if we're just focusing on the 23-24 campaign, relative to the entirety of the last 365 days. So if we're looking at a player that is improving all the time, then I think it's only fair that if we're looking at his stats and comparing them to the other 5 leagues in Europe and strikers, then we should look at his most recent set of data. And this is what we have here. As a player, look, he's still not scoring phenomenal amounts in comparison to players like SERHOU, Guirassy, or Santiago Gimenez, but he's getting 4 goals in every 10 games. He gets an assist every 10 games, and he contributes markedly going forward. But where this player, for me, looks like he is able to offer more than just what a striker does in his the kind of the overall need from a striker, his goals and assists. This guy can create. He can bring other players into the game, and he's up there in the very highest percentiles, the top 20th percentile for basically all things around passing. He passes the ball 21 times a game. He only touches the ball, I think, if we look at this, he touches the ball 42 times, which is in the top 15 percentile of strikers in Europe, forwards in Europe. So that tells me that at 22 years old, his teammates are very much interested in getting the ball to him. They rely on him, they depend on him, and he wants to get involved. He's very energetic and very much invested in trying to be a participant in the play. And I don't think you can necessarily teach that. Sometimes we look at players like Brennan Johnson, not to go harsh on him, but sometimes from my experience with Brennan Johnson, he can go missing a little bit. He sometimes can sit out on the side and doesn't really want to take the ball by the horns. This guy looks like he wants to be involved at every possible chance he can. Not only that, but defensively. And again, I don't know Bologna too well to know if they're under the cosh all of the time. But in terms of what he does getting back and helping out, you can't really complain about this. He gets back and he's in the top sort of 10, 15 percentile. In fact, there's not another forward in the top 5 leagues that clears the ball as much as he does from a defensive perspective as a forward. He gets up there and he's happy to tackle dribblers that are trying to run past him or run at him. And like I say, he's someone who gets back and defends in all the different 3 areas of the pitch. A lot of value adds here. He's touching the ball all over the pitch as well. He moves around. So I'm sure if we were to get his heat map up, you would see him all over the park, which I guess could be a good thing and a bad thing depending on what you want from him. But this guy, for me, is someone that is adaptable, that is willing to learn, and that's something that we should keep an eye on. I don't particularly know if this guy is the right one for us right now. In fact, I'm going to come to my summary in just a second. But like I say, I will put the link for the scout report. Read through it. Maybe wait and see if these links heat up a little bit before you waste your time. But if they do heat up, then read through this scout report, and you'll see it's quite scathing at times about what he's not good at and what he doesn't do. And then compare it to the stats you're seeing now, and you'll see a player that is improving and learning and growing as time goes on. And I think that's quite impressive for someone who's moved around quite a lot in his relatively young years. So for me, guys, I'm going to leave it there with regards to the scout report. Santiago Gimenez, Joshua Zirkzee, SERHOU Guirassy, all 3 strikers doing good things, all 3 strikers under close attention, getting superlatives thrown at them, a lot of attention being thrown towards them, potential summer transfers, and all 3 linked with Tottenham. For me, as I said before, Santiago Gimenez is my number 1 choice. I like the guy. I'm prepared to take the risk on him being a player coming out of Holland and knowing that sometimes that doesn't work out. I've seen enough of him to think that he is what we're looking for. SERHOU Guirassy, on the other hand, I'm very concerned that it's the purplest of purple patches. And I always wonder why it is. If he does, in fact, have a minimum fee release clause, which is so minimal, then why is it that in a market where strikers are in high demand and short supply, no one else has gone after him? Even teams like Arsenal, who are desperate for a striker and don't have much money to spend, they could probably scrape together enough money to get him, but haven't pulled the trigger yet. Why? Maybe there's something to read into there. And as far as Josh Zirkzee goes, well, according to the news reports, there's a lot of kind of PR going on about him. Maybe there's a little bit too much and it feels forced, as the article says. But interesting player, one to keep an eye on. But for me, not ready yet. But someone that perhaps will be ready in a couple of years. I already think we've got someone that has that physical stature, someone that has that kind of dominant presence that when he's fit again and when he's got more minutes at Tottenham can provide something similar to what this guy can, Josh Zirkzee, and that's Alejo Veliz. I'm not looking for a sort of a doppelganger of that. I'm looking for someone that can come in and do everything that we need and is the here and now. We're talking a lot about sprinkling in ready for here and now success for Tottenham alongside the youth. I think we're looking at young players like Arta Vermeeren, Antonio Nusa, all of the players like Adam Wharton, Dan Neil, the guy Rowe from Norwich. You know, the list goes on and on. Hayden Hackney. We've got enough young eyes on the younger talent. If we're going to get a number 9 striker in, I think Tottenham need to go and get one that's going to score 25 goals for us next season. I'm not sure Zirkzee will. I don't know if SERHOU Guirassy will. Santiago Gimenez for me is the best of the 3. The only other player that I'd love above Santiago Gimenez at the moment is someone like Evan Ferguson. But whether or not we can afford what Brighton would ask for him, I'm not so sure. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.